packet that was presented to me rather rudely the other day. But that began a situation where we have had drive-bys from members of the board. We have been accused of lying to them. It has been annoying, and if you read my messages, I have consistently said I respect what the district does. I think it should be done in a more even-handed and transparent manner. And that is the case. There have been a number of poo traps over time. The contention is with one individual. It is not with the district. It is not with the superintendent. And that individual would do almost anything to keep me off the MHRB. So all I can do is tell you to please take it with a grain of salt. I think that you have seen that individual and a couple of his friends here, one of them presenting an appeal very recently, and I believe that if we want to talk about contentious, you got me, you got him, all I can say is make up your own minds about what kind of process you want.
Well, I haven't had discussions with that individual with respect to the record with the City Community Services District, but just the concern I had in different communications, it came from Jim Jackson, I guess, who's the attorney of the Community Services District. It just seemed like it became like rather a standoff instead of working to resolve it in a proactive way. I mean, that was sort of my sense of just reading the documents. So
yeah. It got resolved, Kendall. And 2 days after that packet, this is very recent, 2 days after that packet got slammed in my face in a public setting, I received one of their certified letters demanding a meter reading that was mailed to them in a timely fashion a month ago. And I wrote back by email and said, I have your letter, here's the reading, it was submitted by mail on this date, in the future I will only submit them by email and I will request your response that you've received them. And that's the extent of that communication. And there are numerous communications that are just that simple and straightforward that are not included there. So, as I said, I can't defend publicly against a private vendetta. We have no change under the radar people in Mendocino. I can count them on fewer than my 10 fingers. But as you well know, they're the people who show up in this room as a rule. They're the people you meet, and there are people who have given this process and our town really not a very good name. I'd like to behave in a different way.
Well, that's encouraging. I'm glad to hear you say that, and I'm just looking at documents.
I know what you're looking at.
I'm just
I know
looking at
exactly
documents,
what you're looking at, Kendall.
I'm looking at a paper, but I had seen some of these documents actually way prior to your
I'm sure
mentioning
you
a
have.
recent date. So I just had concerns about not wasting your time in the process and the Community Services District's time in getting a resolution to the questions at hand. That's all. But besides that, I think you've got some...
You do have one side of that correspondence. You do not have the correspondence they sent to me, which was it was threatening, it was rude, it was accusatory, and that kind of approach does generate more aggressive response. I think from most people, and it's one reason that I think that kind of approach by the grown-ups, if you will, by the people in authority, it's particularly important not to approach applicants or approach ratepayers or approach voters in that way because it doesn't elicit the response that you want to get.
Yeah, and I understand that. I'm just seeing it, and I tried to review it, and as I had told you, I've seen some of this correspondence and communication prior. I mean, we're talking things that date back to 1991. We're not talking about anything that's that recent.
No, the 1991 was over the fisticuffs between who had jurisdiction. I think you just saw an example of that kind of situation over a DOT issue. But when that happens, you know, a citizen frequently gets stuck right square in the middle of it.
I guess I would just like to offer you that sometimes when it's, you know, entity against individual, and there's sort of a head-on, a lock, if you will, with respect to the issue. Sometimes there is another course of action that you can take things aside and you can redirect sort of the discussion. You can come from another side or point of the view, saying, "Hey, well, this doesn't seem to be working. I'd like to converse with you to go in this direction, and maybe this will help us resolve it." So that's all. It's just wanting to be able
and
to.
I don't disagree at all, Kendall.
So having that kind of a skill set, I think, is very valuable to have on MHRB because of contentious issues of the past, ones that I'm sure will certainly arise again. Being able to sort of step aside and maybe reframe it, relook at it, and not have it be this us versus them dynamic, and be able to say, well, wait a minute, this is the larger community, and also not bringing things in from the past that we need to bring them to the table today. But I think what I'm hearing you say is that you do embody that spirit, and you do intend to go forward in that direction, and I think that's admirable.
Thank you.
So, thank you.
Additional comments, questions to the applicant? Okay. All right. Thank you very much, Ms. Roberts. And
Thank you.
At this point, I will invite public comment on the